let's see, what's our time?
Yeah, we're gonna.
Oh, we're 2 minutes late.
Yep.
Okay, so with this, I would like to call to order the Public Outreach Committee of the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District for Thursday, October 15th, 2020. At this point, are there any members of the public present who would like to make comments on anything that is not on today's agenda?
I see no raised hands.
Thank you, Arlene. With that, we will close public comment and move to our action items. The first action item that we have today is to consider adoption of the August 24th committee meeting minutes. Everyone had the opportunity to review the minutes?
Yes, I move approval.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve the committee meeting minutes from August 24th. Could we do a roll call vote, please?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Director Edwards?
I'm so sorry. Forgive me, Arlene. I need to go out to the public. If the public would like to make any comments about the minutes from August 24th.
I see no raised hands.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll close public comment and take the motion that was made on the adoption of the minutes. A roll call vote.
Director Edwards,
Approval.
Director Riley,
Aye.
and Director Adams.
Aye.
Unanimous approval.
Thank you. And now we'll go into the presentation part of our meeting today. The first presentation is going to be an introduction by TMD Creative. And I will look to probably Stephanie to introduce the subject.
Uh-oh. Hopefully that wasn't me. So,
No, it's not you, Stephanie.
okay, good. So I do want to introduce Sam Spadoni, who is our primary contact with TMD. Dave Stolt and I met with both Sam and Nick. Okay, I know I'll say his name wrong, Sam. Pasquale? Pascoli, thank you. Thank you, Mary. Last week, and discussed basically an overview of our outreach program, the type of products and materials that we want to see coming out of TMD, what kind of things we think that they can do to assist us with improving our image and whatnot with the public. And then we've asked them to provide you with kind of an introduction as to what their understanding of what we need them to do, and then also to have a discussion afterward with this committee. And if you have other things that you think that we need to communicate to them, we can do that after this. And Sam, do you have a PowerPoint of some sort, or? I think you're muted.
No, he's open.
No? Oh.
You know, I don't see a mic where his name at.
That's because it must be open.
No, somebody better call him. Oh, he's trying to get his phone open.
Figures this happens, right? Well, we had a very productive meeting last week, I can tell you that. And I actually was looking for my notes and
Okay. All right, Sam, I see your mic.
Oh, there you go.
Unmute you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Goodness. Sorry about that. I don't know why. The first time I must have entered the access code wrong the first time I called in. I could hear you, but nobody could hear me. Can I do a screen share?
Yes. Okay, Sam, you now control of the screen.
Great, thank you so much. And so I'm just going to go into a quick presentation, kind of some of it'll recap the stuff from our original presentation, just about our process and things like that. Stephanie, Dave, Nick, Pasculi, and I all had a conversation last week, kind of just to get the ball rolling. And so we'll recap some of the things from that. We have come up kind of with an initial plan, a week-to-week plan. We're not going to go over that in great detail during this presentation, but if you have any questions on that, we can also review that. And then at the end, if you have any other questions, we can go from there. So kind of the first thing is, you know, who's the TMD team that will be working on that? I will be the project manager and the primary contact. I'll also help work on message development. Nick Pasculi will be the account manager. He'll also help with the messaging development. And then if we're going to be doing any media or ad buys, he will assist with that as well. Some of the additional team members that we believe will, you know, be working on this account would be Amos Strauss, who will provide project support and also social media support, along with Athena Morris. Lindsay Little will be one of the graphic designers, and she also will be doing copywriting. Christina Kachu will be doing graphic design and any web or other digital types of design. Gabe will be working on our photography and videography. He's also our studio director here at TMD. And then Amarani Resendez will be in a support role, providing Spanish translation as needed on any of the assets that we create. So what are some of the initial steps that we're taken or are starting to take? We've reviewed the current marketing materials that were provided by Stephanie. We determined to segment the audiences, and I'll get into that in a little bit more detail later on. We set up a Dropbox account to share files between the district and TMD, and that's for the district to share photo assets, logos, and other assets that they have currently. And then as TMD creates assets, those will also be stored there as well so that the district can download them and save them to their servers. One of the things we are starting to work on is a new ad series. The district has ads in the weekly at Carmel Pinecone, so we'll be creating ads for those. We're scheduling a photo shoot in the coming weeks. We'll also gather video assets during that as well. And those will be used for all our marketing efforts, including social media. And as far as the social media goes, we'll take that over for November of this year. And then we'll also, of course, work with the board and the public outreach committee. We're thinking in mid-November how to get everything set up, the messaging and goals going into 2021. And this was in the initial presentation, but I just kind of wanted to reiterate our kind of brand positioning process. You know, so we're starting with the current brand overview. We reviewed some of your current collateral materials and some of your ads. So we're in that process right now. And then, you know, as that's completed, we'll kind of go through steps 2 through 6. I don't think I need to you know, go over these in great detail, but that's kind of the step we'll take in determining the messaging moving forward, so the design that accompanies that messaging. So one of the things that Stephanie, Dave, Nick, and I spoke about last week is as we were reviewing some of the collateral materials, one of the things that kind of popped out to us is that some of the materials seemed like that they were maybe developed with industry, business, or government in mind, and that they kind of go into a little bit more detail and get a little bit more granular, whereas we feel some of that content might kind of go over the head of the general public and might be kind of more than they need to know. So our thought is that we'll kind of simplify 2 main audiences, which one would be kind of industry, business, government, where we would get into more granular detail, and then the general public, where we would, you know, kind of give them more digestible types of information. And some of the ways we would do that would be for industry, business, and government, we develop collateral materials that would go into more depth. The social media channel we would use more to speak to them would be Twitter. And then on the PR side, we want to make sure that we're putting our best foot forward with key decision makers in all of these segments, industry, business, and government, and local influencers that make up these sectors. And then marketing to the public. What we'll want to do is make it in an easier to digest format. Social media, we'll definitely be using Facebook to communicate with them. And we would like to bring in Instagram in 2021 as well. As we understand it, you were maybe gearing up to launch Instagram this summer before you made a change in the marketing organization you were working or partnering with. But that's something that we agree with and think would benefit the district and their brand within the general public. And then other things we'll be using the marketing to the general public are ads. We talked about a newsletter development and also an annual report. And we'll get into some of those a little bit later on. So here's some of our initial thoughts for 2021. Instagram, I think everybody's probably familiar with Instagram. It's a photo video platform that's owned by Facebook. And that's one of the reasons we really want to get nice photos and videos and set up those photo shoots as soon as possible. Gabe is an excellent landscape photographer. So we really want to get some engaging photos that really draw people in. Annual report, we talked about maybe different formats, whether it's a printed piece or possibly even more of an interactive piece like a video annual report. So that's something we'll want to discuss in 2021. We feel like the annual report is an opportunity to spread our message to the public and to the business, industry, government community as well. And we, of course, want to increase public awareness of who the district is and determine ways to measure and evaluate that. We also talked about a newsletter, kind of keeping the public apprised of ongoing projects, water conservation tips and things of that nature. Due to COVID, obviously, you did some public events and outreach in the past. I know in the previous plan that you had, you would go to events like Good Old Days and things like that. Our assumption is that that's not going to be possible, or there's definitely not going to be as many of them in 2021. So what are some ways that we can, get in front of people and make those personal connections without having those type of events? And then on the public relations side, we just want to be anticipate any types of scenarios that could come up in 2021 and make sure, that we lay the groundwork and have a foundation in place should we need to draw on those. And so this is more of our process on an individual project level. And so on each item that we'll be working on, we'll have an initial meeting with you where we're going to listen and learn. We're going to ask you questions, about the audience, the specific deliverable, what's the goal of the PCP, what's the messaging going to be, and then of course, how do we measure success? On the collaboration side, that's where we'll develop our initial proof. Whatever form that takes depends upon obviously the deliverable. And then we'll kind of present that to the district in person, or not in person, over a Zoom call, and kind of go over the details of, what we did, why we placed things, where we placed them, in our general thoughts about the app, how it'll be effective, et cetera. We'll review and get the district's feedback, incorporate that, and then go through that kind of back and forth process until it's approved. And then we'll make sure that it's distributed effectively after it's approved. So the ongoing communication with respect to the committee, this is kind of just our thought. Obviously, if you want to add anything to it, we're happy to do that. But we want to, discuss the latest work that we're doing and the latest deliverables that we're working on or have executed in the previous month. We'll go over any analytics for web, social media, and then also our interpretation of that analytics and the action that we recommend taking as a result of that. And then also we'll review any other quantitative or qualitative insights that we may have. Those could just be, feedback you received from the community about a certain piece we've created, or maybe if the weekly does an audit, hey, this is how many people, according to 2020 audit, the weekly is now reaching. If it's greater than in previous years, maybe we consider adjusting how often we're advertising there. So those kind of things. And then we'll also discuss upcoming deliverables, any issues that you've identified or things we should be aware of for the coming months or months. Listen to any feedback you have on our work that we've done thus far, and then answer any kind of questions. So that's our kind of thought on how we would kind of recap and debrief with you each public outreach committee meeting. Here's just some final notes to keep in mind. I mentioned some of the team members earlier, but we have a lot of bench strength. So if we need to adjust the team members for any reason, or, maybe you resonate with a different team member's aesthetic more than another, we're happy to juggle those. We've picked the people that from our understanding of the district would work best on this project, but just know we have bench strength and can bring in other people, should the need arise. These initial few months will really, really, really be crucial as we lay the groundwork for not just the look and feel, but also the messaging and themes that we want to really hit on in 2021. Again, that 6-step process that I outlined earlier in slide 4 is really important to understanding the brand. We also want to make sure we really understand the different and varied audiences. I would love to hear any feedback that any of you might have with your particular district areas within the district, and how they view MPWMD. Maybe what some of their wants and needs and concerns are with respect to water. And then we really want to work with the team there at the district to make sure we're making goals from the outset, and that we're able to measure those goals. And adjust our campaign, whether we meet, exceed, or don't hit the goals. So, those are just some final notes to keep in mind. And I'd love to answer any questions you may have. And also, as I mentioned, get each of your perspectives kind of on, where your individual areas within the district, where they are right now, and maybe some of the, things that you wished maybe the district had promoted in the past and hadn't, or things that you thought were especially effective, or things you think not effective at all. So, that's, I'll let anybody kind of answer any questions or ask any questions. And then if we want to go into those questions I had, I think that would be great.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Sam. I'm really excited to start to see, where we're going to go. This is really thrilling. The one question that I have is the procedural one for our committee, essentially, and that is, and today, will this committee be the primary conduit from TMD to the board? And will we be able to have presentations from TMD when that may be warranted?
Mary, the first part of your question got cut off, but yeah, we're happy to make presentations to the committee. We intend to be on all the committee meetings that we're invited to. But could you clarify the first part of your question? Just a little bit broke up at the end of that first part.
Yeah, thank you. What I was saying is that I was asking essentially Dave and Stephanie, will this committee be the primary contact with our board on this subject? And will we be able to have TMD come to the meetings, do presentations to the meetings as needed?
I think, yes, definitely.
Yeah, that is the plan, that you are the conduit. There will be minor things, like our regular branding ads and so forth, that what we'll try to do is lay out subject matter by month that you will approve, but you won't be doing ad copy approval.
That's get it.
But
Concept.
right, but big stuff will come to you first before the board.
Great, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Are there any other members of the committee who have questions at this point?
Yes, Chair.
Oops. Okay, yes, go ahead, Al.
Thank you.
We'll do
Good
this
presentation.
alphabetically.
But one of my main concerns right now, that's why I'm glad we're having this meeting, is Measure J. We need to get the word out on Measure J. That's the big thing that I think this committee needs to start working on. And because I think next year, before June or after June, we're gonna have to make our first big decision if we have a timeline to make that decision. So I want to get the word out that we're working on Measure J, and General Manager, you're gonna have to set a time or a date that we're gonna make that first major decision and put it out to the public, and we got to keep on with it. So that's one of my main goals of your outreach and this committee and working with the company. So that's the main thing for me right now is Measure J.
So just coincidentally, while we've been sitting here, Jim Johnson has emailed or texted me saying, hey, just checking on general estimate of when the LAFCO process might be done and when the updated appraisal offer to CalAm and the resolution of necessity. So he's, everybody's circling right now, wanting to know what's going on with Measure J. I think our board packet probably stimulated a little of that. But.
And I'm glad because we got to get that word out on what's going on because we're slowing down a little bit.
Yeah.
Thank you. George, you had your hand up and I think you're muted.
Thank you. Thank you. I would like to take maybe a 30,000 foot look at this, and that includes Measure J. But it seems to me the kind of principles that need to be promoted over the near term is the competence level in the district, the credibility of the district in the community, and the vision we have overall. And to the extent that some of those principles may trigger how the messaging takes place or the format of the messaging, and I think Alvin's right that that's the next big issue on the agenda. But I think more than just that issue is the competence of the district, and I'm just not sure how to present that that kind of messaging. But that's where I'm coming from, is that if we can kind of sell ourselves as the right people, the right place, the right district to be taking on these big issues, because we're competent and we're capable and we have a vision. And at least that's how I'm kind of summarize it for myself. I just like a little response, if I could, from TMD or Dave too.
Yeah, I'm just going to say I 100% agree that highlighting those principles of competence, credibility, and vision, regardless of Measure J, I think are going to be important. We want people in the district to, I think, know who MPWMD are, because I don't think if you went out on the street and asked, 100 people, maybe 15 of them would know what the district is. Maybe less, maybe more, but I want to make sure that name's out there, and then also that it stands for something. And obviously the competence, credibility, and vision, I think, are really, really important with that, with any issue related to water. So yeah, I'm in full agreement on that.
Yeah, and I would add also that, there's been a campaign of kind of undermining confidence in the district and its general manager, both through Ron Cheshire's fictional new group, H2O Future, as well as the attorneys for CalAm in both the Coastal Commission setting, or as recently as last week in the Superior Court setting, where again, they would attack the credibility of my report, our analysis, and so forth. And I'm not sure how we deal with that, because you're dealing with law firms making assertions, but that's not really public outreach, but it's a form of it, because then it gets picked up and, you know, by others. And, you know, but there's clearly a campaign to undermine the credibility of the analysis that this district has done in a variety of fronts.
Yes, I absolutely agree with you. And I think it's going to be the primary thing that we need to deal with because it's all tied to Measure J without question. But we have to really come forward, I think, aggressively to let people know who we are, what we're doing, and that we are fully prepared for this, but particularly you, Dave. I think as well, we'd be foolish to start on this element before the election, just a few
Right.
days away. So as soon as we know if there's a change, and there will be, of course, from Jeannie, if nothing else, as soon as we have the combination of our new board, I think that's really going to be important to dig in. And Sam, I don't know if this is the sort of thing where you interview each of the board members individually to try to determine who we are and why we think we're competent to take this on, or if you approach it, and I'm asking the committee members of this as well, or if we approach it as a block. Here is who we are, rather than here is who we as individuals are. Anybody have a thought on that?
I'll just to speak real quickly. My initial thought of that is I would love to hear the perspectives of all of you as the public outreach committee. And then if I could maybe follow up with the remainder of the board on an individual level, that's what I would,
So, you know, you're the expert here. So if that's what you think is the better way to go, then I think that's, you know, we should follow that as well.
Great.
George, you're muted again.
If I can add a little bit more, I think the attack on the district is largely aimed at Dave. And to the extent that we stand behind him, and I know we have one board member who's not, but how does that play out in developing a strategy, developing an approach, developing a message? How does that work? Because I think if nothing else, we have two top priorities. One is, I think we have to, you know, circle the wagons regarding our professional leadership. And the other is, in effect, kind of broadcast the message that we have the proper vision going forward. And to me, that's kind of how I see the challenge of what we're facing in the near term. And I think Alvin's time frame is about right. If we're not kind of getting this message across, or having succeeded in getting largely this message across by, you know, by the end of the first quarter next year, if we're not March, April, if we're not looking really, really strong in the community, then I think we've not moved the needle very far.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think you're absolutely right. Any other thoughts or comments on this?
Yeah, one of the things I want to maybe broach now, not saying that we should or shouldn't do it, but I think we may need a face of the district, a public face of the district. I don't know whether that's Dave or not, or if he's comfortable or has thought about that, but especially if we're going to be combating against, you know, kind of attacks, I think it makes sense to have somebody within the not necessarily from the board side, but within the district itself, whether it's George or excuse me, Dave or Stephanie, you know, that really is out there being that public face. So that's something I've been thinking about. I've talked about it with Nick, and you know, he agrees it's something we should at least consider. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I don't know how public anybody has been in the past, or if Stephanie is a spokesperson. I'd like some insight on that.
I think Dave ought to be that person. He has done this year and last year, since I've been on the board, he's been that spokesperson for the district. He does the He talks to all these people, Jim Johnson and everything. And I think as long as he out there talking and spreading the word on the district, I think we ought to back him up. That demand report is the big thing that everybody didn't like. And Dave has been pushing that and telling everybody and being truthful up front that nothing has come back on that from the public. And I want to keep him out there speaking for the district. He done a great job, you know. So that's
Yeah.
my move on it. Thank you.
Yeah, and pre-COVID, you know, as you're well aware, I would regularly kind of rotate around city council meetings, chamber events. Both Stephanie and I pretty much represent the district at chamber lunches, chamber mixers. Partly because Stephanie's the most socially active employee we have, who cleans up nicely, so to speak. You know, it's been hard getting any of my engineers to, you know, even put on a suit ever. But yeah, so pre-COVID, we would do a lot of that. The demand report and the shift of the district away from supporting the desal project has affected my relationships. You know, it used to be kind of funny when I got here. You know, let's go back 9 years. When I got here, we had no presence whatsoever with the chamber. We had not been presenting to any of the governmental affairs committees of MCHA or the Coalition of Peninsula Businesses, MCAR, the realtors. And so we made a concerted effort to go visit, and I think it really helped reestablish the district's credibility.
Right.
But because of what Alvin said with the demand study, we're credible among a giant group of people, but we're anathema to another large group of organizations. And so it's a little harder now. You know, I used to go to MCHA events, and, you know, I joke with John Narigi, and it'd be, well, I think it's important to know, you know, who we are as people before we come take your water away, kind of jokes, you know, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very good working relationship. And I just think that the shift in support for desal and to not supporting desal has just undermined the other things the district wants to do, because now we're, you know, an enemy of the state, so to speak. So, but in the current situation, you know, we'll go wherever we can to attend group meetings, but we've been less invited, let's just put it that way, than we used to be.
You know, though, Dave, I'll tell you, I think all of us feel like that. This whole situation is just making everyone just completely isolated.
Yeah.
But I worry very much about our whole community, because I think what you've described is through all of the community. Everybody is feeling, oh my God, I'm losing ground here.
Yeah.
You know, that's really true. So, which is why we've got TMD. They're going to have to be the vehicle that reconnects us to so many places, so many things. You know, and I've been doing like one-on-ones. I'll, you know, with, you know, especially those that have disagreed with me in the past, you know, doing the mask and the safe distance and all of that. Just keeping up, even just personal phone calls, what's going on, kind of thing. Just keep trying to keep that energy and personal relationship going, which is exactly what you've been able to develop.
Yeah, and I will tell you that, you know, that the news media doesn't sleep. So as you saw earlier in the week, obviously I talked to Sarah Rubin, and she got a little scoop on Director Evans. And Kelly Nix checks in with me weekly, and Jim Johnson. Today was he texted, he emailed, and he called. I still haven't talked to him directly, but so, you know, that, because they never sleep, that continues. It's the outreach to some of our business community and city councils that's a little challenging.
George?
Dave, when you say the invitations are less frequent, and I'm sure it's the COVID that kind of has some effect on the invitations in general, but what I'm getting at, and I think this is fits with what Alvin was thinking about the time frame. I think we need to offer more. We got to call them an offer. But also, I also worry a little bit about your time and your fatigue level or whatever. You know, granted, you got an extra 7 days of vacation time off or management leave or something. I'm not trying to play that into this, but I do think we're making an extra request of you, and that's kind of what I'm asking about.
Yeah, it turned out to be just one extra. Was it 7? I can't remember. I think it was just one extra day. Is the fatigue showing? I mean, yeah, no, I appreciate that, but you know, we're short-staffed, and as I said, if it's outreach, it's Stephanie or I, because we're the two social and presentable people for representing the district. So we'll do whatever we can. But I agree wholeheartedly with we need to offer, which actually goes into the next item a little bit. We were going to offer, which we'll give you some background on that. But yeah, I think if we make an offer to come in on some subject matter, that we'll get taken up on that.
I agree. I agree. So going to,
real quick.
who was
Dave,
speaking?
real quick, would you describe media relationships as strong and that they're fairly, representing what you say?
Yeah. And even Paul Miller has kind of made peace with the district. I mean, he'll still go off from time to time, but, you know, we're very cordial socially when we see each other. And, you know, he's been the only one, I think, that, you know, he encouraged people to go up to the district with pitchforks and knives and what have you. And, you know, he thought he was joking, but, you know, can't joke like that in this day and age.
Now. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they're all very good relationships.
So let me just go back to Sam. You might have more questions, of course, but do you sort of get the idea of what it is that we feel as this committee, what we need to do?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay.
No, very, very helpful.
Good. Okay, so with that in mind, I will see if there are any other comments on this item before we go to the next one. We can make a date, Sam, and you would be able to with some sort of approach on this issue.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, after this meeting too, why don't I have Stephanie email everybody's email address, including Sam's primary contact, and that way you can set things up.
Okay.
I think from now until the first of the year, if we could get some kind of blueprint plan from them on how to do Measure J, I'd like to see that come out, because that, you know, like I said, the what Stephanie do is fine, but we got this one big project out there that we got to get to the public, and I want to address them as much as I can. So that I hope we're going to hear what Dave got to say to the cities, because that needs to be done between now and January. So that's all I have. But I thank them for being corporate in the cost and getting on board. Thank you.
Thank you, Alvin. So it sounds like we have a bit of a plan for this. Are there any other questions from anyone? Any other suggestions from Stephanie or Dave?
Just go out to the public.
Okay.
Yeah, and Sam, thank you very much for the presentation. That was very helpful.
Yeah, it was terrific.
Great.
Thank you so much. Okay. With that, we'll close this section of the meeting and go to the presentation to the jurisdictions.
And Madam Chair, this is Dave Laredo. I hate to do this. I have double booked and I cannot participate in the remainder of this meeting, but I did sit in on the phone call with Dave Stolt and the state board on this next item. So my apologies. but
Okay.
I do have to sign off.
Fortunately, you're not part of the quorum, so we're good.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much. Okey doke. So going back to where we were, I'll look to you, Dave, for your comments on the compliance with cease and desist order milestones.
Yeah, so this, just when you think you've got something nailed, something comes unglued. But what drove this subject matter or this idea was claims that became public that we're going to miss a milestone. December 31st, 2021 is closing in on us. The community, the CalAM is going to do its best to balance water with the demand, and hopefully we'll not have to go into rationing. And our internal view is absolutely do we not have to go into rationing. That in fact, without knowing what plumbing constraints there are on paper, the CalAM should be able to comply with the cease and desist order. And so we wanted to go to the cities and not forever. I mean, we don't want to live under this regime. We need a new water supply. But it was being used again as a tool to say, we need everybody behind this desal plant right now because we're coming up on these deadlines, we're missing milestones, and we're going to go into rationing. And we really don't want to do that, but that's around the corner. So give us your support. And it's fundamentally not true. And so we felt it would be important to go to each of the cities and say to the city councils, rationing is very unlikely. And in fact, compliance with the cease and desist order may be possible at December 31, 2021. So we have time to consider thoughtfully how to do a permanent water supply solution. That would be the message. Several weeks ago, I had a conversation with the general counsel's office, Steve Westoff at the State Water Board. And we talked about would the executive director waive the 1,000-acre-foot reduction for missing a milestone because it was out of the control of the parties, the applicants. And at that point, he said, well, staff recommendation would be probably to not waive it and to just enforce it. So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, we're going to hit a 1,000-acre-foot reduction for this next water year. Then there was some confusion based on one of the tables in the cease and desist order as to whether the reduction is retroactive to the current water year or is proactive into the next water year. So we had a series of questions that we had, that I set up a call that Dave Laredo mentioned with Steve Westoff of the council's office and Eric Ekdahl, who's deputy director for water rights and enforcement. And there were kind of three areas that we wanted clarity on. But one is our understanding is that any reduction is going forward. Chris Cook actually had some concerns that the wording made it look like it was going retroactively. And we've confirmed that it is going forward. I think CalAM has also confirmed that through a variety of conversations. The second area is the way the annual reporting is done. Sand City desal is a direct offset to the effective diversion limit. The first 600 acre feet of ASR is counted as if it's part of the Carmel River diversions that are subject to the CDO. Malpaso water that's not serving a Malpaso subscriber, but just being used generally for the benefit of CalAM in general, is counted as if it's part of the water right that's subject to the CDO. And then finally, Table 13 water rights are kind of swept in. So we wanted clarification that if the diversions were actually at or below the legal limit, which is 3,376 acre feet, that all of this math that goes into an annual report, it's tables 5A, 5B, and 5C, which lump other waters together, would not be the test to examine compliance. That if you're in real time, if you comply, you comply. And so our 600 acre feet for ASR is a different water right. Malpasa is a different water right. And we did get confirmation that, yeah, if in fact the withdrawals from the river under the basically call it Order 9510 is the one that determined their legal right was 3,376. So if the company was at or below that, but we were still taking, 1,000 acre feet for ASR, that they're separate. And we got confirmation that they are separate. And so what that does is when you do the math, it shows that, based on the last 5 and now even 6 years of pumping off the river, once Pure Water Monterey comes online at the full 3,500 acre feet, which isn't going to happen until middle of next year, that it will be possible for Cal-Am to pump at or below their 3376. So it doesn't make the CDO go away, but what it does is it takes away the threat of rationing and the threat of fines and penalties. And when you treat Table 13 water rights separately, that's averaged a little over 300 acre feet the last 3 years. In the Seaside Basin, if they pump under their actual limit, they build a carryover credit and so forth. So there's these little pockets of water in normal to wet years, and maybe even into slightly above normal dry, that could probably continue to let Cal-Am meet the requirements of CDO. So we wanted to get this message out in a much more simple fashion than I've just explained. And we've used a chart. I actually presented a chart to the full board. I think it was at the last meeting about how this math works. And the only caveat is they could use a pump station. They could use another well in the valley. They could use a few things, they being Cal-Am, that would allow them to better move water around. And so if there's constraints within the system, we haven't accounted for that. But nevertheless, on the surface, they can be in compliance at the end of 2021. So that call was originally supposed to be last week, and then I was going to come in with an example of some presentation items today. It got delayed until Tuesday. And then in part of the call, the state said, well, since we last talked, Dave, Cal-Am has come in, or not come in, but, had a meeting with Sarah Leeper, Rich Finland, I think Ian was on there, Kathy Horning, to talk about some of the same issues, similar issues. They said, well, and we recognize you sent us a letter, the district, and Planning and Conservation League, Jonas Minton has sent a letter. And then we've had this recent conversation with the Cal-Am representatives. So we now need to think about whether we're taking this to the board or not. Well, that creates uncertainty because our operating assumption was we were going to take the 1,000 acre foot hit. If there's a possibility that it may get waived, then that changes the ball game. So we came away from the call with a lot of clarity on the issues that we set up and put on the agenda, and then some confusion over whether they are or are not going to take it to the water board for anything formal. So I need to bird dog that answer once again, probably with Steve Westhoff. And if their recommendation is not going to be to waive the 1,000 acre foot, well, then we're back in the same place that I thought we were when I put this on the agenda. So I think we're going to have to wait a few weeks before we try to do anything with the cities to get a little more clarity on this one remaining issue. But anyway, I think it's an important message that we do not foresee that rationing is a threat. And we need to remove that threat, because if it's a false threat, just to spur support for the desal project, which is no longer in our board's primary interest, then, we need to, get out there with a little more honesty to folks, telling them what the story is.
Dave, good story, but the bottom line, Mr. Laredo left before this question going to be asked. It's not our fault that this project got delayed.
Right.
Now, if the state water board want to take 1,000 acre feet from us, we got to go one step further. And that next step is what? The courts. That's what I believe, to a judge.
Well, yeah. So first off, the 1,000 acre feet really won't hurt anybody. But more importantly is the way it's worded is they can choose to waive it if there's substantial evidence that it was not the cause of the applicant. But they don't have to waive it. And that's, that's more the issue. But this 1,000 acre feet isn't really going to hurt the community. We're, the effective diversion limit is 8,310 acre feet. Withdrawals from the river have been roughly 6,400 acre feet. So even if you dropped it down to 7,310 acre feet, there's quite a bit of room there. Interestingly, we've built up what's called carryover credit, over 4,000 acre feet worth, which if we were having difficulty making the effective diversion limit, we can pull 750 acre feet out of that bank and utilize that in any year. So even if we lost another 1,000 acre feet, and let's say now it's 6,300 acre feet, right about what's being pulled out of the river, well, we could add back 750 acre feet of capacity. So it's unlikely even after September 30th of next year that we have that same problem. So it's, I'd like to say, hey, it says right here, if it's not our fault, then we shouldn't be punished, but they still have that ability.
Well, Dave, I'm not going to sit back there and get punished just to be punished.
Right.
Now, we got to show this community that we want to be a water company, and we're going to fight for every drop we got. I'm not hollering at you. I just get upset. Well, well, let's look the other way. No more looking the other way. I'm sorry. I'm not hollering at you. I'm just get upset when I'm hearing we got 1,000 acres to give. We don't have none to give.
Yeah.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Edwards. As the chair of this meeting, I have to make sure that you remain in order.
I'm sorry.
Don't pick on the staff.
Yeah, I'm not. But
Oh, no.
Yelling at the staff.
It's just getting me tuned up because I don't want to give
it.
a drop away.
Yeah, well,
I appreciate that.
You want to know one of the other injustices in the way the CDO got written. So in this particular case, if the reason for missing a milestone was not the cause of one of the applicants, so plural, California American Water, the Mayor's Authority, the Water Management District, the City of Pacific Grove, and the Pebble Beach Company were the applicants. Well, a case can be made that it was not the cause of any of us 5 applicants, and really now we're 4 because the Mayor's Authority is virtually gone. But to lift the CDO, it's only evidence presented by one applicant, Cal-Am. And so if we think that we were in a position using our view of future demand analysis and how much supply there is, we'd like to say, hey, there's enough water now, and there's enough water for the next 20 years or 30 years or more. We don't have that authority. So we'd have to kind of exert some authority that wasn't written into the CDO to move it along at that point.
And would we need the support of the State Water Resources Control Board to be able to do that?
Yeah, the way it works is California American would make a representation that there's a new permanent supply and that it's sufficient not just for today's demand, but for future demand. So the worst thing that could happen is, hey, we can meet the cease and desist order limits, and then 3 years later, we've grown by 100 acre feet, and now we can't. And so we either have to overpump the Seaside Basin or go back on the river. So they need confidence that there's a permanent water supply to carry us many years into the future. And we can still quibble with how many years in the future, but there has to be evidence presented. And then the deputy director weighs the evidence and has to concur with communication back to the company. And so that's a Cal-Am to state board to Cal-Am communication loop. And I've been told that in between there, they probably hold a workshop or some sort of public hearing so that all of these interested parties can actually look at the evidence and say, oh yeah, okay, yeah, it looks good. But that's how lifting the CDO works. And then once the state board acts, you still can't set a meter until the PUC lifts the meter moratorium, but that can be done through advice letter filing. So it's a less lengthy process than a full application to the PUC. But yeah, you know, the lifting of the CDO and the removal of the meter moratorium is still vested heavily in the company, as opposed to, you know, where Director Edwards would like us to be, or Director Riley would like us to be as the, you know, the go-to on water issues here locally and regionally. We just don't have authority to do those things.
So George had his hand up, and a quick question before you speak is, I don't see what's in it for Cal-Am to do this. I mean, I feel like they can hold our feet to the fire.
Yeah.
George?
David and rest of the committee, it seems to me that we have more trump cards than being mentioned here. And I just want to try this out on you. It seems like the worst case scenario is that we go into the reserves, we tolerate the 1,000 reduction, and we kind of play the odds over the next few years. It seems like that's the worst case scenario, but it still gets us, we can still move forward. The better option obviously is to get them to remove the order, or at least the rationing order. But I'm curious about what is Cal-Am's argument that they're making to the state. Are they trying to avoid a penalty and fine, and therefore would be supporting some action at the state level? Or are they hoping that there's a delay at the state level to kind of just grind everybody down a little bit more? What's their interest in not pursuing the elimination of the rationing order or the 1,000 acre feet?
Yeah, it's not a rationing order. It's just if you don't have the water, then
yeah,
maybe you'd have to ration. Yeah, I don't know, and I don't know that they're not going to exert that request that it wasn't our fault, mea culpa. It was the fault of others. I mean, that's what I would do. Even if the math works where you can survive without that 1,000 acre feet. I mean, I've made this comment before, more water is better than less water. So even if you don't need it, you should go get it. And so I would, you know, after I clarify this last issue of what exactly Steve and Eric want to do based on the letters and the meetings that have been had, you know, as an applicant, I think we have the authority. Well, we already sent our letter asking both to not invoke the 1,000 acre foot and to also start looking at extending the CDO. And so that's what they're contemplating now, is having heard from all the parties, you know, what do they do? But yeah, if I'm any of those parties, I'd be saying, hey, you know, the forces out of our control conspired to kick this can down the road, not the least of which is COVID and hearing dates and things like that with the Coastal Commission. But I don't know what they're doing. You know, we haven't had that conversation.
Well, it just seems to me that I mean, I think Catherine Stedman's on this
yeah, she
list of participants, so I'm partly talking to her, to Cal-Am, as well as the committee. But it seems to me it's in their best interest to avoid a penalty and a fine. It seems to me, If they're willing to take a hit in that direction, then that suggests to me that they're willing to take hits in other directions too. And they're no longer looking out for the community, they're looking out for themselves. And I think if they're looking out for the community and looking out for themselves, they would want to team up with the district in removing the 1,000 acre feet penalty.
Yeah.
It seemed to me that's in their best interest and everybody's best interest. And granted, that's a very targeted, very specific issue because it doesn't deal with Jay, it doesn't deal with their desal, it doesn't deal with Marina, doesn't deal with the PUC. All those things are still out there. None of it looks like a very smooth road for Cal-Am. So I'm just curious about why they're not looking for some way to smooth some of this out. And this would be one place where they could, seems to me.
Yeah, and I think, you know, not having been in the room and not having gotten the full feedback, that had to be part of the reason they were up or, you know, doing a Zoom call or whatever with state board staff to kind of clarify where all these things are and what the possibilities are. But I totally agree with the sentiment that they should be doing what's in the interest of the community. And as I said, more water is better than less water. So.
Well, I'm just going to use this phrase, and I've used it in a number of my discussions with other people, but this is the first time I've been using it with the board. But it seems to me that that Cal-Am was heading for a crash at the Coastal Commission, and they withdrew their application in order to avoid the crash. And now they're looking for a crash landing, which is at least better than a crash. So I'm just guessing that there are interests to make this process more smooth, and it seems they're not making it smooth, but maybe maybe it can't be smooth. That's my other side of it. And then I go back to Alvin's point about why don't we earmark our interests, put it at the top of the list of what our interests are, and see what we promote and how we promote it, because we do have the community's interest at heart, regardless of what happens.
Yeah, and just keep in mind, that was the basis of the letter that you authorized us sending July. And it made the ask just as you've portrayed it, which is don't hit us 1,000 acre feet, find a way to extend the CDO. So this concept of the carryover credit, we've got so much carryover credit built up, you know, over 4,000. We're going to get even more again this year. It'll probably be over 5,000 total. Well, it's 750 acre feet in a year. That's a lot of years worth of carryover credit. So if the CDO just remains intact as it is, it's done. December 31st, 2021, you got to meet your legal limit. I know Marina Coast Water District's lawyers are like, oh, they'd never do that. They'd have to extend the CDO. And I said, no, you know, they're kind of like the way the Public Utilities Commission was kind of sick of Monterey. State Water Board may be getting a little sick of Monterey too. So, you know, it's the kind of thing where, hey, we've given you all the time in the world. You're really close to your limit. Find a way to live within your means. And we don't know that that's not going to happen.
Well, Mary, if I could just make one other comment. It seems to me, and I want Sam to kind of pay attention, or the TMD people to pay attention to this too. It seems to me, in order to get the public's attention in any of this kind of push for credibility and so on, there needs to be some drama, and this is drama, and I'm sure, Dave, that you can kind of, you know, just put out a presentation that says this is a drama. And that is what it is, because there's a cycle of things taking place over the next few months that make all the difference in the world in everything that's going on in the community around water, all of it, whether it's from Marina right on through our district. And it's drama. And I'm just wondering if there's a way to get attention to the district's point of view, vision, effort, expenditures, commitments, all that stuff, and make it credible and make it and show that it's dramatic as well. It's an interesting little storyline. We're all in, and we're all in it. We are all in it.
I feel I should call him Mr. Edwards.
Well, thank you, Chair.
Yes,
George, I like what you just said. And we need to do what we have to do. And we shouldn't bend because we have 1,000 acres to bend on. No, I like, we need to put it out there. We need to do the expansion and put the water in the ground and tell everybody the water is there. So that's what we need to move on and continue to move. That's all I got to say, but we need to fight. We cannot just turn around and say, we'll give you 1,000 acres because we got it. I like what the general manager said about having more water. We save more water to have more water. And I don't feel like just throwing 1,000 acres in just to make Cal-Am happy and make the state board happy. So we've got to be prepared to fight. That's all I got, Chair, on that.
thank you for your comments. Are there any other comments on this item at all? And I think we would still be needing to go out to the public, I would expect. So are there any members of the public that would like to comment on this item?
I
Silence.
see no raised hands.
Thank you. And then could you remind me, Arlene, did I go out to the public after the presentation from TMD?
No.
I'm going to back up then, putting it in reverse, and we'll ask the public one more time if anyone has from the public has any comments on the TMD presentation that we saw.
I see no raised hands.
Thank you very much. I want to make sure that I keep things in order here. Okay, so we have closed public comment on TMD, and we have closed public comment on the update on the compliance with the cease and desist order. And both of these were just for presentation, so we don't take any votes on this at all. And we will now go to another discussion item, which is suggested items to be placed on future agendas.
Madam Chair, just one question to Dave. Dave, that presentation you're going to give to the Coast Commission, are we going to see that?
Well, I've given you parts, the most relevant parts of it. So I don't think you need to see the whole thing at this point.
Okay, all right.
The editorial was great. I was glad that you did the guest editorial. I thought that was really super.
Thank you. Yeah, we got a lot of compliments, not just me, but the district as a whole for just coming back at it.
Exactly. And sort of the more of the same. You know, that's exactly what we need to continue doing every, 3 weeks, every month. Just something that continues to build up our credibility. George, you had your hand up?
Yes, it has to do with Molly's position. I didn't know, I'm just curious about the timing and what kind of outreach there would be if there's a process like that.
Yeah, it's a great question. So the chair will make an announcement at the board meeting that Molly's moving on. Obviously, the weekly's already picked up on it. And Sarah Rubin did call Molly directly so that the story came, obviously I told Sarah and then Sarah called Molly.
So excuse me just a second. If Dave Laredo were here, would he say, I'm sorry, we really can't talk about this because it's not been agendized?
Well, I'm about to, so what George is asking is whether we're going to put on the outreach agenda a plan for filling or how we fill that slot. And I don't know that that would be the purview of the outreach committee. Rather, it's got to come from the board as a whole. So from an outreach perspective, the board chair is going to announce that she's moving to the East Coast Monday night. We will announce what the process could be at the November meeting, but it's not this board's decision. It's the new board that's seated in December. So then at the December board meeting, we will once again review what the options are for the new board. And we're looking at the election schedule. And I think it'd be a little overwhelming for the new board to make a decision whether it's an election or an appointment at the December board meeting. But the only thing we need to
Got elected. They won't make a decision.
is if you want to do it, if you want to do an appointment, then we have to figure out how to reach out to candidates who are interested and take statements of interest and so forth. And if it's going to be an election, then we need to publicize that because you're going to need candidates. So, but I don't think we have any work as this committee until the board, the new board that's seated in December, makes a decision, and then we need an outreach campaign, either quick if it's going to be an appointment, or you'll have a little more time if you decide to do an election.
And that would come under the purview of the Public Outreach Committee.
If you wanted to formalize a public campaign to get candidates, and we haven't had a special election for ages. I think I don't know when the last one was. Yeah, Arlene, we did a mail-in election. What was that? When was that one?
For
I'm
Division
going
1.
to guess that it was 4 to 6 years ago, and maybe 6 years ago. But I have all the dates and the information.
Yeah, I think it's longer than that
but-
because I don't think we've done it since
I think it was for Division 1.
But I have all the information. I don't have it with me right here.
Yeah. So anyway, I guess suffice to say that filling that is going to have a public outreach role, but it's
Right.
really not for us to discuss or decide because it's the new board has to choose
Correct.
which path. So.
Okay. I was more looking for a schedule of how we might go forward. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and just so you know, there's, we just simply can't because you got to seat the new board and see who you have. Then it's their decision because Molly's last date is when the election results are certified. So she's serving out her term. And so then and this is what you'll hear in November, which is within 10 or 15 days of that date. I don't have my booklet in front of me. We have to notify the county, and then we've got another period of time to make the decision whether to do an election or an appointment. But then the election can be no sooner than 130 days past the decision point. And if you do an election, I think you're only serving until the next general election.
Yes.
And things like that. So we'll lay all that out in November, but even then the board seeing it in November is not the board who's going to make the decision on it. So that the reason we'll be laying it out in November is so that members of the public who follow the district will see what the process is, not so much for this board to make a decision on the process. And then,
When is the new board sworn in? What is that date?
yeah, so anytime, yeah, go ahead, Arlene.
The first Friday in December,
Great, thank you.
following the first Tuesday, I think, but it's generally the first week in December.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if we have difficulty verifying the election results because of the high volume of mail-in ballots and so forth, they may end up delaying a week or something. So we don't know for sure if it's going to be that date.
Dave, how come Bob Brower's seat got filled with the old board? When me and George got elected, how come it didn't carry over to us? How come Bob?
Right.
Brower?
Because he vacated. So it all goes to, so what Molly decided to do was serve out her term. Whereas what Bob decided to do was to, his last date was within the then current board's terms. And he did that on purpose. He wanted the then current board to make a decision. And so he timed it in a manner that all of his colleagues sitting there at the time would make the decision on how to fill it and who to fill it with if it was an appointment.
Thank you. And this is the second time in this meeting that you have mentioned that the mayor's group is just about done.
Yeah.
Has there been any formal, or is there a plan that you know to make any formal dissolution?
Yeah, so Clyde sent something around. I'll dig it up and I'll
Okay,
forward.
that's fine.
Yeah.
Probably shouldn't have asked that question now anyway.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, so are there any other items that we want to place on our future agenda? Nobody's got anything other than just more TMD, you know?
And welcome aboard, TMD.
Yeah, that's great.
And let's give them some time to get some work, but let's have a meeting sooner than later.
Good. Well, I believe that we can meet monthly if we choose.
Yeah, I think, we've talked, no big initiatives should happen until after the election. So right now, we're just kind of onboarding them, materials, our branding ads, things like that.
Great. That sounds good. Sam, have you any closing remarks for us?
No, I'm just very thankful that you had me on today, and I really look forward to working with everybody.
Good. Well, thank you for being with us. So if there are no other items, let me take it out to the public to see if any public member has anything they would like to add to one of our future agendas.
All right.
I see no raised hands.
Thank you. Thanks very much for the public comment. And we don't need to take a motion on the discussion items. The last thing that we have to do is our adjournment. And I think this has been a really productive meeting. I'm pleased that we had the opportunity to meet with TMD, also to come up just with some of the questions and the concerns that we got as far as moving forward. But I very much appreciate the comments that were made at the very beginning of the meeting, which is that we really have to focus on our credibility, the capability, the competence, and the vision for the whole district is just completely interwoven with Measure J. There's nothing that can be separated. It's just hand in hand. So with that, then further comments from anyone?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Adjourn the meeting. Good. Thank you, everybody.
Have a good evening.
I know.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.